This is Spray Point. With close proximity to waves, and the way the water showers up in the air, makes this one of the many great areas along the coast of the Mornington Peninsula. It definitely lives up to its name. Throughout the past years now, I have captured numerous footage of different conditions.
Oh my god.
Whether it being the highest tides and the roughest waves, to a more calmer low tide and exposed rocks. Now that I have the footage I need, I'm going to explain what gives this place its name, the kind of topography there is to discover, and when it's a do or don't to go down exploring. So like mentioned before, Spray Point is in Melbourne at the back coast of the Mornington Peninsula. I first went there on Friday 5th of January 2024, which is the same day I first used my GoPro, which was this video here. I personally didn't record because it was at dusk and I didn't know what to expect, but after setting foot there for the first time, I came to the conclusion that on rough tides, there must be some crazy action. Then Saturday 6th of January, I was there again with the same low tide, just an hour shifted difference. So I took advantage of that and filmed the rocks with no idea what I was filming, no stability, no tripod, and only had the iPhone camera at 720p. And that was this video. Despite that, most times I stayed there was just to relax more with lunch or dinner to settle for the evenings. After a couple of months though, I finally witnessed rough yet photogenic conditions.
Oh Jesus Christ, man!
And only recently I've had the mentality of filming proper videos and explaining what goes on here. And speaking of conditions, the thing I look out for at any beach filming is wind, waves, tide, and most importantly, sun. When there's no sun, you can see how the white water is barely visible, but I'll explain all that in a separate video.
Mate, it has been too long to even closely be seeing it like this. It has been too long. I feel like I'm back in summer 2023. Let's go! Can't get down here. See that? It goes all the way down, I think.
So towards the end of September, October, and so on is when tides become lower and conditions start to ease. It isn't always this accurate, but it is noticeable.
When you're down here, it is so different. The water's already ankle deep, so when big waves come, it's like much bigger than you think. It always happens with me. This wave here. Another thing is to make sure there's no holes in the rock like this here, because that can trip you over.
It has been a while, but ever since that day that wave swept me over, I have been a bit hesitant going near the edge. Regardless, here's another separate impact spot that displays the wave's trough and crest really well, as if it's simulating a bathtub. I would definitely recommend getting reef shoes or something to protect your feet.
Very sharp. Look at that.
Because otherwise you'll be walking on that. which does not seem very fun. If you watch closely, you can see the trough between the waves as the rocks become exposed. Along with the bonus waterfalls, this is the stuff I like to film, but it is generally harder to get near. This outer-worldly thing's called a beadlet anemone, or Actinia equina.
Get my finger.
When out of the water, they close their tentacles and look like a little blob of jello, but when submerged, they use their tentacles to catch prey for food. Much like the other spots, this is where the action mainly happens. Currently the water level is still pretty high, so there isn't much rock visibility, but if you continue watching later in the video, I was able to get the proper footage I need. So on the 5th of October the tide was lower and the swell was smaller, not by much though, but knowing my luck it was more cloudy and windy. Along with the lower tides though, became better examples of the bathtub effect.
I wonder if that goes through all the way down to the bottom.
Like most other areas, this rock sticks out like a platform and is hollow underneath. It even has holes breaking through the top, hence why the water spurts out. There are so many of these all around the world with similar characteristics at a much larger scale.
So we'll just chill here because being down there is pretty dangerous right now. It's very strong. Looks can be deceiving right now.
Now this is where it can get dangerous, obviously. It might seem like I'm down where the waves are, but I am actually positioned on a roughly 2-meter high rock, and the white water that approaches is easily able to splash where I am. Keep in mind though that the tide is out again with a swell height of 1.3 meters. The previous 2 days I showed the swell height was under a meter. As the waves kept rolling in stronger and stronger, I wasn't even paying attention to the camera stabilization because there was so much going on around me. It might not look like it, but the whitewash would be about face height. As mentioned before, what gives the illusion that it's not as big is that the actual water that you're standing in would be around shin height, especially if there is constant waves. Sometimes right after the wave passes, that white water would be even higher than your shin. So the no-brainer when it comes to exploring is to not go down when there is waves. High or low tide, believe it or not, does not actually matter, and you'd maybe get away with it if there was a super low tide with big waves anyway, but that's a rare case scenario. Anyway, this seems dangerous enough, right? Tide on its way in, etc. Nah, wrong. We'll check out this day where the swell is 2.5 meters, with the tide coming in. So it isn't visible, but down there's that 2-meter rock I was standing on in the previous footage that would be getting covered by each wave. Pretty big, right? Nah. Now check out this day where the swell was 4.8 meters. Alright, I'm joking, I don't have that. But that's not to say it can't happen or hasn't happened. So it is currently Wednesday, 16th of October. I just got out of the hospital, got home a couple of hours ago. I have a cast on my arm, so it is definitely going to take even longer to make this video now. I won't be able to go in the water or anything. I'm simultaneously making this video and the next video at the same time. So now I gotta wait even longer to get the right footage I need. Everything's all good, I just need to get this one little bit of footage. Ouch.
Just going down here because it's a bit risky going on the sides of the cliffs where my arm is hurting still. It's much more safer.
If I had to say, these were probably the most beautiful and picturesque conditions I've ever captured. But one day I couldn't swim due to surgery is when it is like this. As much as I love to keep it in, we gotta move on because I got lots to explain. Now, you may have noticed in the clips I have shown you, in order to see a splash, the wave needs to hit something. Well, to put it simply, that is all that's happening. It is hydraulic action occurring against what is geographically called the wave cut platform. Lower tides especially enable the waves to be at a lower point against this wave cut platform. Like other areas, with Spray Point, key topography and unique water conditions is what creates this kind of beauty. Firstly, the conditions don't need to just be big waves. It's more about the trough and holes that appear in the water. Normally, the more wavy and choppy the water, the more deeper the holes and troughs will appear. These conditions are the most troughy I've seen due to a mix of strong winds, big swell and a semi-low tide. Watch how after every wave there's a really deep trough. Hard to notice, but in this footage you can see how the water sucks away right after a small wave and right before a larger wave. Again, this is the trough or holes in the water that have travelled and reached the rock, hence why it looks like it clears up. This clearing phenomena is key to make time for the next wave to actually hit, and not just swash over like the rest. Now secondly and most importantly is the topography element. Waves can't just run up with deep water or nothing underwater. Therefore, there is something forming these waves into a crest before they hit the edge of the rock, which is simply another rock. But this rock specifically is normally underwater and isn't visible from the cliffs. This was the footage that needed really calm conditions that I was waiting for. So this right here is the rock edge that the wave smashes. And as you can see, that rock in the water covered in the red seaweed is what gives the wave the run up and energy to break. And when a wave is about to break right before it hits something, it's what creates the biggest splash, which is the splash you see. When it's a very low tide, even the much smaller waves are still able to get some run up and especially recede. So the more trough and lower the tide, the more of the lower rock is exposed, resulting in more run up for the waves. With this day, even though the waves aren't the biggest, when it isn't windy you can see the trough between the waves a bit more clearly, especially when it reaches the edge of the rock. Even though wind does contribute to waves, Spray Point's weakness is how windy it can get there. This is mainly because of how far out the cliff is. Normally though, the main wave doesn't necessarily hit the edge, especially on really high tides. This is because of the water level being higher than the wave cut platform. Which brings me to the conclusion. Now after all that, an important note is, this only happens 25% or less of the time. Majority of the time, the wave simply swashes over the rock, which is due to it not being troughy enough and the water not having enough time to recede. Still very mesmerizing, but not the splash you're hoping for. Again, it just all depends on the conditions. Now that, my friends, is what gives Spray Point its name.
these are the conditions that you look for. Check this out. Wow.
As much as I love the waves, going down exploring the damaged and eroded rocks on a calm tide is very fascinating to me.
So when I was here before, the tide wasn't fully out. But now that it's fully out, you can really see a massive rock. The water rises up. Wow.
Just by looking at this angle here, you can tell how much the top part of the rock is floating and how it's more eroded underneath. Here's the bathtub spot with a lower tide. The sun in the frame didn't necessarily make for the best lighting, but you can still see that beautiful seaweed being exposed, which is actually called southern bull kelp, known as one of, if not the strongest seaweed in the world. Standing on this side gives us a great view of the seaweed, but it can be way more risky when it's wavy due to the rock pools behind me. But as we head towards the end of this video, I just wanted to say I have only explained the basics of this amazing spot, and there is so much more detail I can go over and to discover. But that will all be for next time. That's all folks. Thanks for watching.